Okay, so good morning. I'm live with Denise Stegall, who is a happy living coach and founder of the Healthy Living List, which I'm hoping Denise will tell us all about. I'm a proud expert of the Healthy Living List, but we are rounding off this October World Menopause Awareness Month, finishing off, I think, with an awesome topic, happiness. So take it away, Denise.
So thank you, Tracy. It's always great to talk with you. I absolutely love talking about happiness and living healthy list and what we do and how we help people to achieve that. So what I do, so my background actually is, it's just kind of funny, hotel restaurant business management.
Oh, wow.
So my background is actually in food and nutrition and catering. So I've been around food and nutrition for a long time. I started cooking when I was 11 and really found how cooking for somebody else or for other people made other people happy. And that made me happy. So, one of the things that I just absolutely love to make sure that I do in my life, and I recommend to other people, is to try cooking for some people. You know, whether it's your family, and to find something that's joyful about it. A lot of people don't love to cook, but it can be such a fun experience, especially if you do it with your family. You know, sometimes my husband and I'll cook together, so it's kind of fun. So that's really kind of where I started in my career. When I went to college, I had no idea I would be starting an online healthy living platform, Living Healthy List. And as our concept has grown, I've come up with something that is what I call the Living Healthy List method. And essentially, everything that I do and that I teach revolves around the Living Healthy List method. And what that is eat real food, make good decisions, and be accountable. And it's amazing how almost everything in life kind of goes back to that. You know, it's almost any decision that you make, any concept, anything that's going on in your life. If you're eating real food, you feel good. Your body feels good. Your brain is working, is functioning properly, which helps you to make good decisions. When you make good decisions, life is good. Things are happening. Things are moving in a very positive way. And the being accountable piece is sometimes when maybe you don't make a good decision, or you make a good decision and you're like, you know what, I did that. It's kind of taking the accountability and saying, you know what, I did that. Good, bad, or indifferent, I did it and I'm moving forward. And I think when we take that accountability piece and really focus on that and say, yes, this is what I did, that makes us feel very confident. It makes us feel self assured. And that to me helps us when it comes to our personal satisfaction, equal happiness. So that's really where I start when it comes to happiness in our lives. And I know we're talking about perimenopause, which is an interesting phrase. Um, Something that I never knew about until I was really in the depths of it. And I was 37 years old when I started experiencing perimenopausal symptoms. I didn't know what that was. I mean, I knew menopause, you know, when I was 50, right? So I still had some time. Um, but at 37, this didn't seem right. I asked my mom. She's like, "Oh, you better go to the doctor, see the doctor." Went to the doctor. Went to the doctor. Doctor told me. Essentially, what he told me is, "Oh, it's just a phase you're going through. You'll be fine." But I wasn't fine. I didn't feel fine. I didn't feel good. I didn't feel healthy. I didn't feel confident. Um, and that didn't make me happy. I wasn't myself. So, come to find, after doing a lot of research, that yes, you could start perimenopause in your 30s. Um, Found out just a few years ago that this isn't uncommon in my family, but nobody talked about it. Had we all been talking about this,
Mm.
it would have been so much easier. So I'm really excited that you spent this time this month really focusing on perimenopause and how to deal with it, how to recognize it, and what to do. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, knowledge really is power when it comes to perimenopause and menopause. And it's a whole big thing that happens to 51% of the population. And it's just like, you know, the elephant in the room, the unsaid, which can deeply affect your happiness.
It does. And it's amazing how just one conversation, had I had this conversation with my cousin, how old am I? I'm now almost 50. Had I had this conversation with my cousin 12 years ago, I probably would have done things a little bit differently. It would have been a lot easier.
What do you think you would have done differently?
One, I would have had the knowledge that it wasn't just me, that there wasn't something wrong with me. And I wouldn't have spent so much time looking for those answers, like what's wrong with me? Had I realized that, okay, this is something that happens to some of the women in my family. Okay, so it's hereditary. That's normal, at least somewhat normal. It wasn't this kind of, oh, something's wrong with you. It only is happening to you. And maybe I would have asked better questions. Maybe I wouldn't have gone to the OBGYN who was an older man.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Maybe I would have found so there's a menopause and aging department here at Mayo Clinic where I live. I would have found them first because to me, menopause, I wasn't anywhere near that.
Yeah.
But they could have helped me from the very beginning.
Absolutely. And this is a big part of what I do and why I set up the Perimenopause and Menopause Club, because we are often under the assumption that our doctors and our medical teams are up to date and know their stuff and they can help us. And what I have learned the hard way is that doctors, even your, OBGYN, they may be given, if they're given 2 hours, 5 hours on menopause in med school, that's a lot. Yeah. And so really the onus is on us to learn a bit about it so that we can ask the right questions. You absolutely hit the nail on the head. And then that way we can ascertain, is this someone who can help me or not? And if not, then we go looking for other things.
Right. And I think when I was going through all of this, and I spent hours and hours and hours searching on the internet, and literally the answers that I was finding was something from, oh yes, this is normal, it's just a phase, to buy my product, buy my stuff, buy my program, I have all these things that you can take, to, oh no, this is not, you may have a tumor and you're dying. I mean, ridiculous amounts of from one end of the spectrum to the end. And actually, that's really when the seed for Living Healthy List was planted. I didn't know it at the time. Of course, I do now. But what happened was, after weeks and weeks of sifting through websites and sales pages, I got lucky and I found something. It was a website from an OBGYN in Maine. And I live in Minnesota, so not that close. But what they did, they had some information, and they had I guess it was a questionnaire. It must have been a questionnaire. So I went through the questionnaire, and it was asking questions that the doctor didn't ask, that the nurse didn't ask, that the physician's assistant that I worked with, none of the questions that I was answering on this form did any of the professionals that I went to see, it didn't even come close. And so I filled out the questionnaire, which asked me for my phone number. I put my phone number in, clicked, sent it, and, kind of like, ooh, I hope it's real, real people that can answer this, because now they have my phone number. And literally 10 minutes later, the phone rang. And it was a nurse from this company. They were called Women to Women at the time. They've since changed their name, but that was what they were called at the time. And for the first time in months, somebody listened to me. They connected with me. They asked me the questions that I didn't even know I needed to answer. Mm-hmm. And it was that connection that really helped me to move on and figure out what was really going on with me. And I think that's another part of Living Healthy List that I think came out of my experience, was that connection. Yeah. Because there were lots of stuff. There was lots of, like I said, buy my product, take my program, but there was none of this back and forth where you could ask a question, or, I think I probably cried for an hour. And that, to me, that was the piece that was the most important This woman had a product to sell me right away. She did. She didn't sell it to me because she wanted to know what was really going on with me. And I have to say, in the 2 weeks from my first conversation with her to the second conversation, I noticed a lot of things that I hadn't before because I wasn't paying attention. They always say that things get better, or the numbers that you focus on get better. It's the same thing with your health and your happiness. The things that you focus on absolutely get better because you're focused on them. And little things that I hadn't been noticing. Just little things like having ice cream, just a little bite of ice cream before I went to bed. Hello, sugar spike. That wasn't helping. The bedroom was too warm. Little things like that I really never noticed before. But because this nurse had mentioned this to me, and she's like, okay, let's track these things. And I think when it comes to happiness, health and happiness, we do need to track where we are. And this for me was the start of that, was really tracking what was going on in my daily life, external, internal, physically, mentally, emotionally, all of those things. And I think during perimenopause, all of those things are all over the place. Of course, I remember being a teenager and those were all over the place too. So from the time I was a teenager to the time I was 37, it didn't change very much. That to me was the beginning of figuring all of this out and understanding that what I was going through was normal, that there were ways to manage it. And really that brought me back to who I was, to Denise, the person who, the fun person, the person who had energy.
And I would hazard to say that is quintessential happiness. Coming back to yourself, finding your authentic self again. Can we talk a bit about that?
Sure. For a long time when I was struggling with the symptoms, the authentic self person really didn't exist, because I wasn't me. I didn't act like me. I didn't feel like me in any way, shape, or form. I'd started to gain weight, which I had never experienced before, and I hadn't really changed anything. So I kind of felt like I was just going through the motions of life. And at 37, 38 years old, I should have been, everything else in my life is perfect. I've got an amazing husband who, he's great. He really is amazing. We have a lot of fun together. We travel most of the time. We travel. We have a nice big house. We just have a great life. But I didn't feel like it. I wasn't happy. And I wasn't happy because Denise here wasn't happy, because I wasn't feeling it. And I think coming back to that authentic self, again, I think this is kind of where that eat real food piece started. Because even though my background is food and nutrition, we travel a lot. So there was a lot of times when we were eating out and not eating probably the best foods. Probably some really, really good foods, really rich, heavy foods, that aren't typically in my diet. So really just getting back to that eat real food piece. And that was a big part of the 2-week program, or 2-week process that I went through with the nurse, was really getting back to what I liked. The way I like to eat, I have a small breakfast. I like to make lunch my main meal, and then dinner is just kind of something light. But with my husband, his days are very different. So he may not eat a lot during the day, and so dinner is his big thing. So I had to realize that one of two things: either I needed to change, kind of adopt a different eating habit and have dinner with Mark, because that's a social time. We'd sit and have dinner. But if I was going to do that, I couldn't have that big lunch, because then essentially I was having 2 big meals during the day, which of course that was what was leading up to the weight gain. So all of us, again, everything is secular, and we don't notice it until we notice it. And so for me, coming back to eating the foods that I liked, not eating the foods that Mark may want. I could still make them for him, but not eating the foods that I typically wouldn't. And I really try to focus on a 85%, 85% plant-based diet. I'm not completely vegetarian. I do eat some meat, definitely some fish. Um, but I had gotten to a point where I was eating a lot of heavy meat, which I've never been a big fan of. Small bits and pieces, but a lot more frequent. And for me, that wasn't who I was. It wasn't making me feel good. And I didn't realize that. So, again, coming back to that authentic me actually revolved around what I was eating.
Mhm.
So, that was an interesting piece, I think. Um, and again, I think that's why Eat Real Food is the number one step in the Living Healthy List method to health and happiness. Um, And, when it comes to health and happiness, like I said, this is all kind of secular. There are four things that I really try to focus on when I think of being healthy. Obviously, eating real food is a big part of that. But I think healthy body, healthy mind, healthy spirit, and healthy finances. And again, when we're talking healthy, or sorry, that authentic self, those four pieces are so essential. And again, they're things that we kind of think of, but unless we're actually focused on them, they're just kind of out there. Yeah,
I
we know we should be doing something different.
I love that you mention finances because often that's overlooked. A lot of health coaches or life coaches will talk a lot about body, mind, and soul, but those bills got to be paid. And a lot of the kind of unhealthiness that we're experiencing is stress related, and a lot of that stress is financial. So thank you for having that as one of your pillars, because that again is often talking about the elephant in the room as well, the thing that is just not discussed. Can we talk a bit more about that?
Absolutely. So I remember when I was a kid, I didn't know that we weren't rich. Okay. My mom went back to work when I was in seventh grade. Maybe I was in eighth grade. I think seventh grade. So my mom stayed home with us when we were young. My dad was a plumber. He always was working. Sometimes there were times when I remember him working on a Sunday. When we were really little, he used to take us to a park on the Sunday. So he didn't work every Sunday. So we had everything that we needed. We had a nice house, we had a yard, we lived in a good neighborhood. We had clothes that, you know, we shopped at Marshall's and we got nice clothes. I mean, I didn't know anything about, big fashion and all of these things that when I went away to college, I realized that we didn't have. I also realized that we weren't really missing any of that. I do recall, though, as I was getting older, when I was in high school, I do remember my parents talking a lot, not necessarily fighting, but I remember conversations about paychecks and bills, more about, getting and it was kind of like the big things. The mortgage was not a big deal, it wasn't very high, so that was paid for. But it was all the other things. My dad worked independently, so they had to pay their taxes at the end of the year. And I remember that was always a stressful time. And I remember my mom sometimes, putting things on credit cards that she didn't want to, but she had to. And so this finance piece, it was clear as I got older, but we never really talked about it. It was always, kind of like hushed conversations, or I'd walk into the room and they start talking about something else. So finances weren't something that I really thought about or worried about until it was time to go to college. And I realized that there was no money for me to go to college. So my mom and I had the conversation. And when I went to school, we kind of had this agreement. My mom took out loans, I took out loans. And so all of this, I realized as I was getting older, as I was going through college, the things that they had done as I was growing up were good, but they didn't necessarily have a plan. And so that's when I started to realize that, healthy finances doesn't necessarily mean you're filthy rich. It means, one, you have a plan. You know what's coming in, you know what's going out. And also that you've you've kind of curbed your impulse buying. And I'll admit there were times when shiny object. I'm like, ooh, I want that. Ooh, but I want that too. And I remember at one point, I was probably in my mid 20s. I had like $1,600 on a credit card. And I was just making enough money to pay for my apartment and my car and my car insurance. And at the time, the cell phone that was, like that was about this big at the time.
Yeah.
And so then paying for this $1,600 credit card bill, wow, that to me, then that was really the eye opener. And so that's when I started to figure out, okay, we need a plan around this. Everybody needs a plan around their finances. And again, it's knowing where you want to go. I think that's the important thing. All of us, we'd all love to be independently wealthy, wouldn't we? But that's not realistic unless you have a plan. Obviously, working with a financial planner is helpful. There's a ton of tools out on the internet. Actually, one of our experts on Living Healthy List is a finance coach. So she's not a financial planner, but she helps people to look at their finances in a different way. And that's why I think is really important, because a lot of times, the financial planners and kind of the banks, they have their self-interest in mind. When it comes to your finances, you need to have your self-interest in mind. And I think that's really the difference. And that's where having a plan is really important.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, going into this perimenopause, menopause period, right? You're heading towards like the end of your career for many people. And there can be some anxiety about your retirement, which can really affect your happiness.
Absolutely. I remember when I was young, my dad always said, oh, when he retires, he's going to buy a boat and he's going to do this. And when he retires, he's going to do that. And there was always this, retirement was this thing that was way down the road, that one day you kind of woke up and you were retired. But he didn't really plan very well for that. Like, how is he going to get that boat? Like, he didn't really think about that. And I think a lot of people, when you're in your 20s, you're not thinking about retirement. Even if you work for a company that has a 401k, you may be putting some money in there, but you're not really thinking about it. But I think by the time we get to this perimenopausal phase in our lives, we've matured, hopefully, not necessarily grown up, but we have matured. I think it's always important to have a little bit of a childlike quality, playfulness. But I think when it comes to this, and like we said, sometimes, I was 37. My cousin was 32 when she hit perimenopause, and she still had young kids at home. So the plan for her was different than the plan is for me. And everyone's plan is going to be a little different. But I think it's important to realize at some point you may want to retire. Now, my husband will never retire. He's got way too much energy and too many ideas. But there may come a time where it is necessary for him to retire. And so having a plan, whether it's a plan A, a plan B, it's essential to have that plan when it comes to, the stress that comes around finances. And with perimenopause, with all of the symptoms, and, one day is different from the next. We know that. And to add that additional stress of not knowing what your finances are, I think just multiplies the symptoms. Sometimes I think it can be unbearable.
Yeah. And at least, as you said, like knowing your numbers, knowing your health numbers,
Absolutely.
and knowing your financial numbers, so that you are actually like living within your means, living within your reality, which can possibly help a sense of calm, because there's also a lot of anxiety that comes with perimenopause and menopause. And we had an anxiety coach on a couple of months ago. People can look, I think it was a 3-part series that the nurse psychologist did. Anxiety is a big problem for women around perimenopause, menopause. And I think, I mean, there are many things that go into it, right? And for many people, it's new onset anxiety. And I think the life stresses, the financial stresses, and the health stresses can play a big part of that. But at the same time, that anxiety can then be debilitating.
It can, and that's why I think the some of the other pieces of that healthy lifestyle really come into play. You know, stress, there's so many ways to kind of beat stress or release stress. Because sometimes, I mean, some stress is always going to be there. We know that, but it's a way of managing it. And again, eating well. And there's obviously foods that you want to pay attention to when you're going through perimenopause. I say eat real food, but I really mean mostly vegetables, legumes, beans, which are the same thing, seeds, whole grains, and your lean meats and fatty fishes. Those are so important. You know, getting rid of kind of the junk, the sugar and the white flour is so important because again, when you're giving your body the nutrition it needs, it's under less stress. When you start feeding yourself or feeding your body all of those other things, the white flours and especially sugar. And when I say sugar, people think, well, we don't just eat sugar, but sugar's in everything. I mean, the cakes and the cookies and, you know, the ice cream, like I was saying, would have a bite of ice cream before I would go to bed. And, you know, kind of looking at how much sugar is just in a spoonful of ice cream. Your body is less stressed when you're eating well. Your body is less stressed. So if your body's less stressed, you can handle some of these external stresses a little better. We're just better prepared. And I think also with that healthy body piece comes exercising. It's such a great stress release. Stress release, I say, not necessarily stress relief, because we know there's always some kind of stress. I mean, that's just life in general. But releasing stress it's really essential for that happiness piece that we're all striving for. And you and I've had this conversation. It's exercising smarter, not harder. And I still, at this stage, I still struggle with that because I want to get out there and I want to, you know, I don't know, prove something. I don't know what I'm proving. I don't know who I'm proving it to, but I want to do all of these crazy boot camps and all these things. And my body now says, not doing that. So I've had to find different ways. And one of the things I really recommend to everybody, get outside. I don't care what you do, just get outside.
Yeah, we had a wonderful walking challenge in the group last week. I don't know if you saw any of that. And it was just amazing to see people's feedback and the pictures of their walk. It's almost too easy that we don't do it, right?
Yeah, we really don't have an excuse. You know, people who live in this city, like, oh, you know, there's parks. I live like right outside my house. I'm in Minnesota, so I have a lot of trees right outside where we live. There's some beautiful parks, and just 10 minutes down the road, there's a trail, and it's a 16-mile trail. I could probably walk pretty far on it, and it's beautiful. Mark, my husband, and I, we just 3 days ago, we actually went out in the snow. Yes, it has been snowing in Minnesota. But it wasn't very cold. It was about 30, 40, probably 32 degrees, which for here isn't too bad. For October, maybe it's a little early, but just going outside and just feeling the breeze on my face, and, you know, kind of just being there, like, wow, I felt like a kid, like being out in the snow.
Yeah.
And any stress that I was dealing with before, and, you know, I'm having some issues with social media right now, just not being able to get into it. That really has caused some additional stress that really isn't that important, but I made it really important. And so just going outside and kind of forgetting about it and really finding again what was important, being outside, being in nature, and connecting with my husband. Yeah. And that's I think sometimes it's great just to be out on your own. But going for a walk or a run or a bike ride is so important when it comes to connecting to somebody, whether it's your spouse or your child or your mom. That's really important. And I think it's one of the better places to have conversations because you're outside of like the comfort zone, like of your home. And sometimes it's just nice to be out and in a different environment.
What is your definition of happiness? It's such an elusive term, right?
It is. Most people will say, oh, well, happiness is kind of a fleeting emotion. And I don't really believe that. Some people will say it's joy that you're really looking for. And okay, I get that. But I think for me, happiness is contentment plus. So being content could mean you're complacent. But what I think is it's more than that. You know, I'm happy with what I have. I'm content with what I have, but I still have dreams and I know that they're attainable. So
Right.
it's enjoying what you have, appreciating what you have, and appreciating the knowledge that you have more to learn, to give, to see.
Yeah. For me, it's also very much a matter of finding and living your purpose.
Absolutely.
Because I think we are all very purpose driven, and many women who hit our age may have been a bit shifted off course with life, career, children, whatever may have been going on, and that we don't even know who we are really anymore, what our purpose is. And now we're heading into this new phase of life, um, not sure anymore of who we are, what we should be doing, because there's a whole new script.
Yes. And it's interesting. I hadn't really put that connection until right this second. That's where this, in my opinion, where this healthy spirit piece comes in. And that means something different to everybody. But what I think of when I think of healthy spirit is more embracing life, embracing who you want to be. Because you're right, at some stage in life, you're a daughter, you're a college student, you're a mom, you're a wife, or give it a name, you're a something, and you're living life for other people and other people's expectations. But when we get to this stage in our lives, it's about us, and it's about the courage to be who we are, and even if it is going out to find who we are again. But I think that's the piece that's really important, because there's an adventure out there. We just have to go and find it and be brave enough to just say, okay, I'm going to go find the adventure today, and find some small thing each day to really enjoy and to be happy about and to celebrate.
I love that. I really do. I love it. I love it. And almost for me, just personally, anecdotally, it's kind of almost getting back, like they call perimenopause and menopause like reverse puberty. Okay. So it's almost like we're going back to that pre-pubescent child brain view of seeing the world, but with the wisdom of our years. So it's almost like a coming back. It's like, well, what were the hopes and dreams and adventures of that girl, right? And for me, that's been very exciting. That kind of really coming home. Again, that's the authentic peace self.
Okay, so that person, just this is kind of funny. So I was just thinking about how old was I? Okay, so that 12-year-old girl, that 12-year-old Denise, this was when I was graduating from sixth grade. I guess I was in sixth grade. 12-year-old Denise, pre-pubescent Denise, was going to be the first female president of the United States.
I love that. There's still time.
There's still time. But you're right. Nobody ever said to me, well, you can't do that. At this stage in my life, I don't really want to do that. But that, especially at that time, I would see, the president on TV, and I was like, wow. And there was a very different feel about, how I felt about, how I felt about that whole concept of leadership. And maybe that was it. The president was the only person I really understood in leadership. And that's something that I've really come back to in this time of my life, is that leadership piece. And I'd kind of forgotten that I'm kind of good at this and I enjoy it. And I don't enjoy it because it's me leading. I love watching the people that I work with grow and learn something new. And if it's something that I've helped them with, all the better. If it's something that we've grown together and learned, that's really, to me, what leadership is about. And I've worked in places where there were leaders, but there wasn't a ton of leadership. It's different. And for me, that is really the exciting piece. And when I think of why I wanted to be the first female president of the United States, it really was about, bringing people together.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm doing that with Living Healthy.
I think you're doing a pretty great job. So maybe tell people a little bit about what Living Healthy List is before we finish off.
Sure, great. So Living Healthy List is livinghealthylist.com. We are an online health and wellness platform. Essentially, our goal is to make sure that we're providing you with honest, reliable, and unbiased information. For me, that is the most important piece, that it's unbiased. We have coaches and experts in different areas of health, wellness, personal development, and even fun, because having the health and the wellness and even growing every day is great. But if you're not having any fun doing it, what is the point?
Exactly.
So we focus on those 4 areas. And then what we do on the website is we have tons of information. Some of it is in the form of blog posts from each of our experts. And our experts range from, really run the gamut in those 4 areas. So there's something on Living Healthy List for everyone. And our goal is for Living Healthy List to be the place that you come to often for the information that you're looking for, questions, connection. Each of our experts has a page on Living Healthy List where you can connect directly to them. You can read about them. You can read their articles, their blog posts, and learn how they can help you before you pick up the phone or send the email message to say, hey, I'm interested, let's talk. And what I love about what my experts and I really focus on, again, it's that honest information. Obviously, everybody has a program or a product to sell, but that's not what Living Healthy List is about. First and foremost, it's about education and that connection that you make with the experts. And then, whatever happens business-wise outside of that is great, but we want Living Healthy List to be the place that you come to really for the information and for our community. So we're really excited about growing a community of like-minded, both experts and an audience who is really ready to get rid of all of the nonsense and all of the noise on the internet and come to one place where you can trust what you're reading.
And really, I recommend everybody to go and check out the website, livinghealthylist.com, and see if there are any coaches there that resonate with you with any of the issues that you're having. Denise is doing a wonderful job, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be a part of Living Healthy List. So thank you for having me on that.
Oh, absolutely. We're so
Thank
thrilled to
you
have you
so much for coming to chat to us today in the Perimenopause and Menopause Club. It's been wonderful. And I think, we need to give our happiness perhaps a little bit more attention.
I would agree. Thanks, Tracy, so much. I appreciate this.
Thanks. All the best. Have a wonderful day. Bye.